So today's topic I've actually discussed in a stream before, and it was recommended to me in a comment recently, and it's a very good one. It's going to be discussing Ryu Ishigori versus Hakari, the man with the highest output in history against the luckiest sorcerer in history. And today I'm joined by Blaziken. He is a fellow Jujutsu Kaisen YouTuber who also discusses great Jujutsu Kaisen content where he scales characters. It's really great stuff, and also he's going to be uploading a video about Yuta versus 15-Fingered Sukuna, so be on the lookout for that on his channel. It'll be in the description. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're going to be starting off with points for Hakari.
Okay, so now let's talk about Hakari. His abilities that we've seen so far is that he's a master hand-to-hand combat. His exceptional hand-to-hand combat was shown, and it was obviously his proficiency in taijutsu was shown in his fight against Yuji. He ended up resisting Yuji in order to win Hakari's approval and ended up suffering several blows that obviously was shown with Hakari deemed to be holding back as well. We know with obviously Yuji's abilities with his hand-to-hand combat, so it gives us a good range in terms of his hand-to-hand combat skills. You obviously seen with the fight against Hajime as well. He's shown high level of hand-to-hand combat, or maybe not to the level of Hajime or some of these other Jujutsu sorcerers. He has rough curse energy and is one of the Jujutsu high students with the most potential. It's likely that Hakari possesses extraordinary levels of curse energy. He's very adept at reinforcing his physical attacks with curse energy, allowing him to deliver devastating blows. From what we can infer, Hakari's curse energy is apparently much rather textured than that of others. He was told by Gojo that his curse energy has an edge, giving his blunt attacks a sharp cutting effect. Regardless of how much little force Hakari puts behind the blow, his opponent will always be struck with a sharp pain regardless, and this was evident in the fight against Hajime. Let's go to his innate technique. Private Pure Love Trait. Hakari's innate technique allows him to manipulate probability and use attacks inspired by the named romance manga series. The technique is primarily utilized through Hakari's domain, and now we will explain his domain expansion being Idol Wrestler's Gambler. Hakari's Pakinoko themed domain expansion creates an area resembling a train station. The domain manipulates probability, allowing Hakari to hit a jackpot and get a temporary bonus of unlimited curse energy. We also know he gets unlimited curse energy, he has higher attack output, he also has the ability to move the coordinates of his domain, and that was evident in his fight against Hajime, as well as he has the highest application of reverse curse technique, and that was evident with him taking away lightning strikes, taking away poison, and reviving his ribs and certain body.
And of course, all of this goes into the fact that his domain expansion is rigged, so the moment he hits his first jackpot, he's gonna keep hitting them. As they say, the house always wins. And now I'm going to be discussing arguments and points for Ryu Ishigori. And now strap in because I'm going to wank this man pretty goddamn hard. So let's begin with Ryu Ishigori himself. He was stated to have the highest cursed output in all of history, though this does not include the periods after he died. But what's crazy about this is that this can be taken to be that he has more cursed energy output than even full-powered Sukuna, as crazy as that sounds. So what's even crazy is the fact that Sukuna was alive and had already experienced his prime when the statement was made, and it was even made by Kenjaku, who knows firsthand just how strong Sukuna is. Obviously full-powered Sukuna is stronger than Ishigori. It just goes to show you that his output is no joke. This doesn't even get into the fact that due to his output being so high, this also greatly increases his durability, since he was able to not only go toe-to-toe with Yuta, he was able to outpower him. And this is a Yuta who scales directly to 15-Fingered Sukuna, which check out Blaziken's video about Yuta versus 15-Fingered Sukuna. We discussed that there, which should be up at the very least a couple days after this video. And this doesn't even get into the fact that his overall cursed energy is tremendous. Though it's not as high as Yuta's, that's okay because he doesn't use reverse cursed energy. Since he's so durable, he doesn't need to use it, which in turn means it's okay for him to not have as much as Yuta, though it's still incredibly high. And this doesn't even include the fact that he has a domain expansion, which only the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers have. Now, one argument against Ishigori is the fact that he lost to Yuta, or that there's a very false assumption or bad analysis that it was a 2v1 against Yuta. Please remember that it was a 1v1v1 free-for-all. So yes, granted, Yuta is incredibly impressive and strong for coming out on top of that. However, it was not a 2v1 against Yuta, since Ishigori and the cockroach actually do the most damage to Uro, and Uro is actually the first person to even damage Ishigori majorly. This is beside the fact that they were at each other's necks the whole time and had not once cooperated or attacked Yuta at the same time.
Another good point for Ryu is that the Sendai 4 and Hajime all seem to be scaled around each other, indicating that these are all elite level Jujutsu sorcerers, and that can be inferred from the information that we can Kenjaku.
Now, before I actually state my own conclusion, I want to kind of justify it with this. In Jujutsu Kaisen, it's a lot like Hunter x Hunter. Matchups matter a tremendous amount, as we've seen with dozens of examples, such as Uro being stronger than the cockroach curse spirit by many tiers, yet she still feared to fight it just because of its counter to the sky ability. Or for example, Mahito being far stronger than Yuji, however Yuji has the advantage of having Sukuna's soul in him, so Mahito is not able to use most of his ability. In this same case, I believe Ishigori is a horrible matchup for Hakari. Now, I think that if Yuta and Hakari were to have fought 100 times, Yuta would win 65 believe 70 times out of 100. And Yuta is stronger than Ishigori. Yet, I think if Ishigori were to have fought Hakari 100 times, being nice to Hakari, Ishigori wins 97, 98 of those fights. And being realistic, Ishigori wins 100% of the time. Now, the reason I say this blasphemous statement, which seems to make no sense at first, is remember, Ishigori is, I should first start off with scaling base Hakari. Base Hakari, even highballing it, is Supreme Grade 1 at the height of that. He is definitively not a special grade sorcerer, or he would have been ranked as so if his base was that strong. At the bare minimum, Supreme Grade 1, me and Blaziken both believe he is that strong. However, we've seen characters like Jogo can one-shot even Supreme Grade 1 and Grade 1 sorcerers like Nobito and Nanami. Granted, it was said Nobito could have dodged if he had his hand and that they were both out of stamina. Nonetheless, he still demolished them badly. And this Ishigori scales to 15-fingered Sukuna, who no-diffed Jogo, who no-diffed the Grade 1 sorcerers. Now, I want you to imagine just what one Garante Blast would do to base Hakari. It would eviscerate him. His bones would not be left. And this is not even including that a punch from Ishigori, which sends Yuta flying back and bleeding profusely, would blow Hakari's head off in base. The reason I say Hakari wins so many of the Yuta fights is that we've seen from Yuta's personality is that he does not go all out, even in life and death battles, unless he absolutely needs to. For example, he did not go all out against Uro and Ishigori unless he absolutely had to and was out of cursed energy. And he didn't even fully manifest Rika in his fight with Yuji. Rika had just partially manifested, which isn't his cursed technique. So that's why Yuta gives Hakari a chance to hit jackpot. However, we've seen that Ishigori is a bloodthirsty fighter. He starts his fights with his strongest attack. If Hakari does not hit jackpot on his first try, he would just kill him instantly. And even if Hakari activates his domain expansion, the reason I say that it's possible that Ishigori wins 100% of the time is that Ishigori's output and cursed energy, especially output, is so overwhelmingly and disgustingly high that it would instantly swallow up Hakari's domain, completely removing it, just as Gojo had done to Jogo. So Hakari wouldn't have the chance to hit jackpot. But even with the benefit of the doubt for Hakari, I still think Ishigori would kill him if he doesn't hit jackpot on his first try.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is when we talked about him being Supreme Grade 1. I believe he is of that level. However, at this moment of time, there could be something that could potentially counteract him being higher than that. We first can talk about the fact that he's said to be scaled as strong as Yuta. Regardless of whether we believe Maki said he was lying or not, Yuta directly from himself said that Hakari is stronger than I am on a roll. At this moment of time, I do not believe this statement based on what we've seen. However, we can still infer that he is close to scale around Yuta's level. Secondly, now let's talk about the special grade. The special grade thing is interesting. I agree with you that he's a Supreme Grade. However, to potentially counteract is, one, we haven't seen enough of him in his base form, so it could explain why the Jujutsu High members had such a question mark. Secondly, he was suspended from Jujutsu High, so he wasn't going to be re-ranked due to the fact that he started the altercation. Therefore, in terms of having his actual status ranked, furthermore, the third thing is Gojo himself spoke volumes of how strong Hakari is. Of course, we haven't seen enough in terms of him being the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer in that regard. However, with two individuals who we can infer are the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers have spoke volumes in terms of Hakari, we can assume that there is something more in terms of base form, or maybe even furthermore rainbow abilities that could explain more of him as a fighter. So those are one point. Now let's talk about Ryu. I think Ryu's personality, as we've seen, has that of being bloodthirsty. However, he shows a similarity in Hakari in trying to enjoy the fight. We can infer this from the fight against Yuta with how he would talk about this dessert metaphor and how he was enjoying this fight and he needed to find this person who would crave him and give him this dessert. So similarly with how Hakari uses a similar thing with his fever, we can see how they both have this intuition to enjoy fighting. That Ishigori could allow Hakari to have hit his jackpot because of the fact he wants to test and see how close Hakari is. You made a very good point with, unfortunately, if he does get hit by a Granite Blaster, I do think the matchup is wrapped up. However, I'm going to assume that for the way he did the fight against Yuta, Hakari dodges the first Granite Blaster and we're going to say our lucky man hits the jackpot again. And once he hits the jackpot, I think the fight completely changes, and this is where I think Hakari does beat Ryu. If we talk about jackpot in terms of, obviously, Ryu does not have any reverse curse technique, so he can't necessarily guard himself, and I know Hakari doesn't necessarily have the highest finishing moves in terms of dealing the final blow. But similarly, the way I've seen him kind of fight with Hajime is I think he's done an attrition style warfare. He hasn't necessarily tried to kill him, he's been trying to continuously wear him down and drain his curse energy. That's just kind of my in terms of how he's been fighting. So we could assume he would do a similar way with Ryu, and that is evident with the fact that in the brief fights that we've seen with Hakari up to chapter 189, he's been doing ways in which he's trying to deal with Hajime and his one-shot electric ability. He can do things to prevent himself from getting caught by Ryu's initial Granite Blast. I think that is the biggest hurdle in terms of the fight, is if he can hit a jackpot before he's killed by Ryu. I think the minute he hits a jackpot is then pretty much, in my opinion, Hakari will beat Ryu, just because I don't believe Ryu can last 4 minutes and 11 seconds against Hakari. And my final point with Hakari in terms of why I think he wins is if he does hit his jackpot, and we're assuming that he evades because Ryu would like to delay the fight to see how strong Hakari is, it will put himself in a position where he now has his domain located, prevent the distance between him and Ryu, as well as he now has unlimited curse energy, as well as the ability of a reverse curse technique. I don't believe Ryu will have enough things, even with his high output, to deal with Hakari in jackpot. However, that is my condition for him to winning, is that he'll have to jackpot. So what do you think in that regard?
Blaziken makes some very great points, especially for Hakari. I definitely agree that if Hakari can just hit his jackpot once, since the way Hakari's domain is rigged, he would just keep hitting jackpots over and over, and this would make him a great match for Ishigori. However, the only counter arguments I have to this is the fact that I don't think Ishigori would hold back against Hakari just to make the fight last longer. From what it seems like, Ishigori likes fights that are full on, max power, and when the person can keep standing and keep fighting. So that's just my opinion, where I don't think he would hold back. And one other point for Ishigori is that I just think he's just too fast and too strong for Hakari to somehow dodge his Garante Blast, or even blow to blow if he goes in to punch him, since Ishigori scales directly in terms of speed to Yuta and can match him hand for hand. And the fact that Yuta and Uro are not able to dodge his Garante Blast, where Uro needed to shield herself actually, I just think it's unlikely. However, even if we say that Hakari somehow dodges the first one and activates his domain expansion right away, as we've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen, when someone activates a domain, someone responds with their own, either simple or domain expansion. I just think the fact that his output and overall cursed energy, but especially output, is just so high, it would completely eat up Hakari's. Not like Dagon on Megami, but it would just truly overtake it. However, I do agree with Blaziken. If Hakari can just hit that first jackpot, then it's all set. However, given the points I said, I just think in terms of Ishigori's own personality, bloodthirsty nature, wanting to fight at the max all the time, and the fact that his Garante Blast is so wide, so fast, so destructive, and can even split off and still be strong enough to heavily damage someone like Yuta, I do think it's just very unlikely that Hakari would unfortunately have the chance to hit his first jackpot. So that's why I favor Ishigori so much. It's not that Hakari is weak, far from it, it's just the issue of Ishigori's personality, his bloodthirsty nature, and especially of him just being so strong to begin with. It's why I just think it's an unfortunate matchup for someone like Hakari, who in his own right is a monster, but he needs to hit that first jackpot, in my opinion.
To counteract your point on Ryu's personality, so when Ryu was then reincarnated, he intends to use his second life to seek a worthy opponent to fulfill his insatiable hunger. So in my opinion, and his desire for combat, he would allow Hakari to build up and eventually hit his strongest point. And that was kind of seen with his fight with Yuta. He obviously did, like you said, start off the battle with his strongest move. But once he saw Yuta, when Yuta became more of a stronger opponent, his mentality to the fight changed and become more ruthless as it came on. This was evident with how he went and obviously punched Uru in their fight between each other, as well as even fighting Yuta directly. So I think in this regard, to similar with how Hakari as well is another individual who likes a good fight and wants to wait till that person, they would then allow each other to get to a point where they've at least figured each other out before they get to the grand conclusion of the fight. Meaning I think he will be able to allow Hakari to get closer and eventually claim victory, with him eventually hitting his jackpot.
So that's what Blaziken thinks, and you know what I think. However, what do you think? Do you think Ishigori would kill him instantly, or do you think Ishigori would actually allow him to hit jackpot? Let us know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the video. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe for more, because I have Jujutsu Kaisen content similar to this, and be sure to check out Blaziken's channel in the description, because he also has content just like this that are of great quality. And yeah, have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Peace.